Hari Om Tat Sat. Welcome to Swami Jyotirmayananda Society, a journey to self realization. Please subscribe our channel for the mystical meanings and to enjoy daily satsang. We are currently exploring the book Yoga Essays for Self Improvement, authored by Swami Jyotirmayananda, narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. So, today we are going to explore the chapter Beware of the Evils of Self Assertion. So remember, you are not this limited self. The self is always infinite, unlimited, not this body mind that you think you are. You are the non dual Atman, the substratum of all that exists. Your glory is higher than the highest mountain, deeper than the deepest ocean. Your radiance far outshines the effulgence of the sun. You are vaster than space itself and more enduring than time. You are the very embodiment of eternity and infinity. So, all these are definitions of the self, and that self resides within you. So, in essence, that is your potential. Don't let the ego get confused where you start relating it to your own body, etc. When you assert your little self, you continue to enter into the illusions of the world process. What is this little self? It's your body, mind, senses, intellect, ego. All the things that have made you successful in the world do not apply in the spiritual realm. In fact, we have to unlearn a lot of things we have learned. So, uh, when you negate that little self and free your mind from the pressures of desire, you continue to discover the glorious heights of consciousness deep within your being. The assertion of the little self is a diseased state of consciousness, and an aspirant must endeavor to free himself from this subtle disease. It's called ego. When it raises its ugly head, it wants you to do things, and you start getting angry and showing displeasure, and with it comes attachment, hatred, all those things. They are all diseases that need to be eliminated from our personality if we want to improve and take the spiritual path. When he loses sight of the important movement to eliminate the self assertive urge from his consciousness, his sadhana or spiritual discipline becomes sluggish, defective, and illusory. This is why you need spiritual preceptors, gurus, teachers, guides, mentors, satsang. All these things are needed on this field to keep us in harmony and to keep us true. Otherwise, we can easily delude ourselves into thinking we are evolving, whereas we may be regressing. But when he keeps himself awake to the ego sense and all its subtle and gross manifestations in the personality, he advances on the spiritual path with amazing speed and rapidity. So you then start making profound progress. It is the self assertive urge that assumes the role of the ego sense and ignorantly identifies itself with the self. So the ego starts to take control. If you are in error, if you are not advancing, it begins to take over the mysterious psychophysical personality of man as if it were the supreme ruler of body and mind. It desires happiness in the realms of illusions. Its efforts to render happiness to the soul instead multiply its sorrows and miseries because it's taken the wrong path. The path of ego is rajas, activity, which will take you towards misery. It creates karmas which condition the soul to endless embodiments, and that's where the problem comes. The ego urge manifests itself in various ways. An aspirant must gain a deep insight into the subtle workings of his ego, while pride, anger, hatred, violence, greed, arrogance, and all morbid movements of the mind are grosser manifestations of the ego. Desires for name and fame, securing recognition from society, and self preservation through sons and grandsons are its subtler implications and manifestations. So, this resides everywhere in society, and therefore we need to manage it better. Excuse me. This ego urge has its roots in the causal body and spreads its branches, flowers, and fruits into the astral and physical planes of each individual. At the mental plane, there is a constant need to be recognized by others, to be liked by others. This is expressed through self praise, criticism of others, and gossiping about others. So it's an indirect way of saying I'm better than you, and that is seldom the case because we are deluded, we think like that. Further, all worldly relationships are sustained by the needs of the egoistic urge operating through a person. So, in the vital plane, this urge creates the temptations of sexual desires, which seek to fulfill itself through biological reproduction. Involvement in the illusions of sex is backed up by one's clinging to the ego sense deep within oneself. So, since you want to exist, you want to multiply, you want to perpetuate this pleasure and joy, but it's all due to um, illusion and lack of proper understanding. When the mind is freed from the dragging influence of sexual desires, it gains an insight into the mystic movement which leads to self realization. Therefore, scriptures speak of the glory of brahmacharya. Brahmacharya means control of the sex urge or celibacy from one standpoint, but the other one is also to be established in Brahman. Brahma Acharya means all your actions should be purified, and therefore celibacy is an important part. But it takes a long time for many struggle on this because this urge to self create and procreate is very deep. Through millions of embodiments we have done this. So now to stop it, put a break on it, will take self effort and intense discipline and constant effort. So don't consider this to be a very easy thing. Some people struggle with it and give up spirituality. Others deal with it. But ultimately, if you are a true yogi, you have to follow brahmacharya, as that is going to give you aura of ojas. Ojas shakti is called the sexual energy that is wasted, um, is now uh, like the the purified clarified butter, or the fuel that gives you the light that you need to radiate, and that is the aura and the spiritual strength you will acquire. Not only should an aspirant restrain his mind from the pleasures of sex, but from the pleasures of all the senses. But since sexual desire is one of the most prevalent ones, it is more stressed to control that one. But otherwise, the taste, also the eating habit, and also all the other habits that we form over time are difficult. It takes discipline to get to that point. So, in this way, he wages a constant war against the inimical ego sense, which has its citadel in the depths of the unconscious. This is why it becomes a struggle, the struggle of purification, the battle, and we have to emerge victorious from it. Watch your mind during the conditions of praise and insult. The eagerness to seek praise and to hate anyone who criticizes is basically egoistic. By nourishing your ego, you create obstacles on your spiritual path. When you maintain a balanced mind in pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and criticism, you are breaking the illusions of the ego. And again, they will come with practice and with time. It will not happen overnight. On the spiritual path, an aspirant is not expected to turn away from his ego sense in one jump, as we just covered. He learns the art of transforming the expressions of egoistic urges operating through his personality. And how do you do that? By taking recourse to good association, performance of selfless service, repetition of mantra with feeling and understanding, devout meditation, and other varied techniques of spiritual sadhana. He turns his desires into spiritual aspirations for self realization. So, like a dam, he takes the flow of the water and converts it and diverts it to the direction of God. The flow that is wanting to go towards the world is now channeled towards God. So you don't change the flow of the actions, you just, the actions will continue. You have to change the direction of the flow. The flow itself cannot be stopped. So instead of seeking the pleasures of the senses, he seeks the joys of inner fulfillment by yoking the senses to a perspective of karma yoga, which purifies the mind. When placed under the control of purified reason, the very same senses which formerly functioned as wide open channels, bringing impressions of attachment and hatred into one's unconscious, now become avenues drawing higher impressions based upon an increasing awareness of the divine self. Accordingly, instead of directing your eyes to fleeting sights of this world, use your insight to discover the glory of the self operating through the beautiful scenes of nature. Instead of directing your eyes to the pressured, egoistic needs of life, direct them to meditation upon the divine self. Instead of seeing evil, see which is good. Instead of hearing evil, begin to hear what is good. Attend satsanga. Instead of thinking degrading thoughts, think elevating thoughts that wing their way to the divine self. A spiritual, rich life is not characterized by a gross denial of the senses, but by a festivity of pure joy arising out of the glimpses of the glorious self. Instead of being attached to the grosser objects of desire, direct your attachment towards God and all that leads you to Him. Detachment and attachment go side by side. You detach from the not self and attach to the self. With the removal of Maya, which is gross impurities such as anger, desire, greed, and vikshepa, distractions caused by subtle impurities in the form of subtle attachments and hatreds, the mind becomes increasingly adept into inquiring, who am I? But when the mind is steeped in impurities, the light of the reason grows dim. It is unable to reveal the many aspected tendencies, tentacles the ego continues to spread in one's personality. So, remove gross impurities by taking recourse to the art of Karma Yoga. Remove subtle impurities by taking recourse to prayer, devout meditation, and surrender to God. And finally, remove the veil of ignorance by practicing deep meditation into the self and inquire, who am I? Assert your essential nature, understand the illusoriness of the objects of the world and the vanity of desires. Realize that the world of time and space is a degrading fall from the glorious status of the non dual self. Wake up from the dreams of the world process. All this is illusory. You are the changeless, deathless, immutable self. And so, this is how you make a change to your personality, reduce your ego, increase your self awareness, and may God bless you. This is Swami Nikhilananda. In tomorrow's satsang, we will cover an important topic, how to overcome fear. Hari Om Tat Sat.